Now, there are some words that don't really fit together. Here are some pictures. So like a thin sumo wrestler, or maybe like a poor king, or a generous Yorkshireman, or like hot ice cream. Those words, they don't fit together. And our passage today shows us another pair of words that don't fit together. And they're this: arrogant Christian. In Jesus' eyes, to be an arrogant Christian is to be like a thin sumo wrestler or hot ice cream. It doesn't fit together. They're almost opposites, arrogant Christian. Now, you might be listening and thinking, hang on, this guy's off on one. All Christians are arrogant. Christianity is an arrogant religion. It started crusades and wars. Christians are judgmental and condemning. Christians are people who look down their noses at me. Well, if that's been your experience of Christianity, I want to apologise. Now, it is possible to get hot ice cream or a thin sumo wrestler, but they're not right. They are far from what they're meant to be. And an arrogant Christian is far from the real deal. See, as we look at this bit of the Bible together, we're going to see that Christians are set free by Jesus, so should humbly serve others. That's the big point today. Christians are set free so that we can humbly serve others. So we're going to see this. Kind of Christians are set free. So let's get into the story. We're picking it up, chapter 10, verse 32. See that it's coming up there. Jesus is walking with his disciples to the capital city. They're headed to Jerusalem. And he pulls his 12 disciples away from the crowd because he wants to teach them something. This is actually the third time in Mark that Jesus has taught them the same lesson. Now, some people are brilliant at learning things, but the disciples are like me when it came to me kind of learning to drive. I passed my test on my 5th attempt. I was a slow learner. And these disciples are slow learners because Jesus is teaching them the same lesson that he taught in chapter 8, verse 31, and in chapter 9, verse 31. And here it's the same lesson again in chapter 10. He wants to teach them that he knows he must die. Look how specific Jesus is. He knows that his death isn't a cosmic accident. Jesus knows exactly what is going to happen to him. Think about it. They are walking to Jerusalem. And Jesus says, verse 32, we are going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests, the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. Jesus knows he is walking to his death, and he knows about all the gory details of everything that is going to happen to him. He knows he's not going to die in battle. He knows that he's going to be killed like a criminal. He knows that he's going to be delivered over to a certain group of people, and he knows who they are. He knows who's going to condemn him. He knows he's going to be passed over to another group, the Gentiles, who will mock, spit, flog, and kill him. He knows 3 days later he will rise. Jesus knows exactly what is going to happen to him if he goes to Jerusalem. And he walks to Jerusalem. He is walking to his death. Every time in Mark's gospel, though, when Jesus predicts his death, one of his closest friends has a go at him. So Jesus has 3 really close disciples that he's invested lots of time and energy in. Those 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John, he took them up the mountain and was transfigured before him. They saw his glory. But those 3 guys aren't the sort of friends that you or I would really want. They don't seem to listen or to care. So in chapter 8, Jesus explains about his death, and then Peter pulls him aside and says, basically, Jesus, shut up. The second prediction is there in chapter 9, and Jesus says he's going to die because he wants to welcome weak people who trust in him. John responds to that by bragging about how he told another Christian to shut up because he wasn't part of their team. Well, now in chapter 10, Jesus is walking to his death. He's graphically explained what is going to happen to him. How do his 3 best friends respond? Wow, Jesus, that must be such a big burden for you to carry. Is there anything that we can do to help you out? Are you okay? No. Look at what two of his closest friends say. Verse 35. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. They completely ignore what Jesus has got to say. They think they've got something much more pressing. Their need is bigger than his. Verse 36. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. These guys know that Jesus is the king, and they get a sense that he's the one who can maybe give them what they really want. And they really, really want to be great. They're on a quest for greatness, and it blinds them to see what's happening to Jesus. I mean, these two guys are being proper sly, aren't they? And you see the other disciples, they're not happy with it. They're in verse 41. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. It all kicks off. Why? Why were the other disciples angry? Well, because they wanted to be great. It seems that all the disciples want greatness. Do me a favor. Imagine that you were there with Jesus at this moment. You were one of the 12. Which group would you have been in? Would you have cheekily, like James and John, tried your luck and tried to get Jesus to make you great? Or would you have been like the rest of the disciples, really kind of cheesed off because of what those guys have done? Because secretly, you want to be great. They're the two options, aren't they? We all want to be great in some way. We want to be noticed or loved or respected. By nature, we either arrogantly pursue greatness or arrogantly grumble about other people who are trying to make themselves great. I wonder, how do you pursue greatness? Maybe you are as brazen as James and John. You've got some kind of get-rich-quick scheme. Or maybe you're the one who always wants to be up the front. You always want to be the center of attention. You want everybody to listen to you. Maybe in a particular relationship, you expect it to be treated in a certain way. And if your partner doesn't give you what you want, then you get angry or you give them the cold shoulder. Maybe greatness for you is being loved. You long to be the one everyone looks after. You hate missing out. You get really angry when you feel like you've been left out of something. Maybe you love being the one that everyone turns to, one that everyone else thinks is great. What does greatness look like to you? What do you want? To be respected, to be loved, to have power, to be able to control things. Maybe you think greatness is seen in being kind of over other people so that you can choose when you get involved in relationships and when you withdraw. What does greatness look like to you? How are you trying to achieve greatness? I wonder if you have a sense of how trying to be great affects others. You see, the disciples' longing for greatness makes them callous and harsh towards Jesus. When you think of what Jesus has just said and how they respond, they're so harsh. They're ignoring the fact that God in skin has just predicted that he is willingly going to die a criminal's death, even though he's done nothing wrong. Now, we can all be like them on our own personal quests for greatness. The root of that quest is found in our hearts. Our hearts are sinful. We want to be the center of the universe. We want to sit on God's throne. We want people to serve us. And so what Jesus says next is going to require a miracle for it to happen. Jesus calls his disciples to live in a radically different way. And he does something so we can live in radically different lives. So follow along with me. We're here, verse 42. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all." Do you see what Jesus is calling them to? It's that upside down kingdom that Simon talked about in his kids' slot. It's what we celebrate on Remembrance Sunday. Instead of seeking to be served, joyfully serving others. Instead of trying to get the best seats in the house, being willing to be a servant. Instead of trying to get recognition and respect, honoring others and giving them recognition. It's what we admire. But the reality of it goes against the grain of often who we are. So if you think you already live like this today, if you think you always act as a servant, you always put all others first, if you are never seeking your own greatness, then you are blind. I mean, this week, if you think like that, just keep a little log of all the things that you do and answer this question. Why did I do this? Was it to serve them or to serve me? I have to be honest. Even though I'm a Christian and God is at work in my life, far too often I am serving myself instead of serving others. I think greatness is found in you respecting me. Even when I'm helping others, part of the reason I'm doing it is because I want you to think I'm great. Look, in Jesus' day, a servant, verse 43, or a slave, verse 44, was someone who never expected a thank you. They got on with serving because that was their job. When the rubber hits the road, who should you be serving in your life? Who should do the serving in your life? Do you think people should serve you or you should serve others? An arrogant Christian thinks they are better than others. They are above them. Jesus says, following me means you put yourself under others. And do you notice verse 44? It's not just some people. Christians are called to be the slave of all. Not just people who you think are better than you. Christians are called to serve and value and honour all other people. Even the most messed up, the person who has nothing to offer you in return. Jesus says, if you want to be great in my kingdom, then you will treat those people the way I do. And verse 45 gives us the reason why any of us can do this. So let's look at verse 45 together now. So, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus says that his death has a purpose. He's clearly sovereign over his death. He is giving his life. Now, some people say that the cross is God showing the world how much he loves us. Now, in a sense, that's right. But also, it doesn't make that much sense. So imagine, I don't know, me and you go on a socially distanced walk along the Leeds to Liverpool Canal. And as we're walking along, chatting about various things, all of a sudden, I say, I want you to know that despite the lockdown, I know you feel isolated. I want you to know that somebody cares about you. And so I jump into the freezing canal and I die. Everyone would be like, what a stupid thing to do. It's a demonstration of love, but it's stupid and pointless. Some people think that's what the cross is like. It's like God showing the world how much he loves it because he's willing to die for it. Well, That's not quite what's going on. It's more like, imagine we go on this socially distanced walk along the canal, and you slip into the canal, you bang your head, you fall unconscious, and I dive in and manage to rescue you, and you survive, but then I die of hypothermia. How would people respond to that? Well, it'd be all over the echo, wouldn't it? Everyone would know I had given my life for you, that I have saved you from danger. Me giving my life has a purpose. Me dying in the canal goes from a stupid thing to do to a beautiful thing to do. So why did Jesus say he died on the cross? Look there, verse 45. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. I wonder what you think of when you hear the word ransom. Maybe you think of films or pirates. But back in Jesus' day, ransoms were more common, and they were used to pay to secure the release of a prisoner of war or a slave. Jesus says his death buys us out of the thing that binds us. It satisfies justice, and it buys our freedom. Do you see that the word ransom, it does both of those things, doesn't it? It shows us the two things that Jesus' death achieves here. It points us to two things that Jesus' death achieves. It pays the debt we owe, and it sets us free. See, at the cross, Jesus' death pays the debt we owe. All the wrong things I've ever thought and said and did, he takes the punishment for it all. All those things that people know about us, and all those secret sins, all those things that make us feel dirty, all those things that we are ashamed of, all our arrogance and pride, all the good things that we have failed to do. Jesus pays for them. Apart from Jesus, each one of us has a debt that we can never afford to pay. We cannot earn enough good points to pay our own ransom. We are trapped in our sin and under God's judgment. Now, throughout the Old Testament, there is a constant teaching thing about the fact that forgiveness by God is costly. So the Jews knew that they needed a substitute. So in the Exodus, they had the Passover. And the Passover reminded them of what God did, that he passed over his people, because the firstborn son in Egypt, the firstborn son of everybody died, apart from those who killed a lamb in the place of their firstborn son. The lamb died instead of them. And then once a year, the whole nation of Israel celebrated this day called the Day of Atonement. And on the Day of Atonement, the high priest confessed all the sins of the people onto a goat. And then that goat was slaughtered. It died for the sins of the nation. It died instead of them. And then 700 years before Jesus, Isaiah the prophet wrote these words, looking forward to somebody who would take the place, who would carry our sin. Listen, Isaiah 53. 700 years before Jesus, he wrote this. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way. But the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Jesus pays the debt we owe. On the cross, he swaps places with us. On the cross, he endures the hell each of us deserves. He drinks the cup of God's judgment down to the very dregs. He drowns under the flood of God's judgment. He pays the debt I owe. And just like when a ransom is paid for a slave or a prisoner of war, they are set free. Jesus pays the debt and we are set free. We're set free from the power of sin. We're set free from the power of the devil. We are set free from God's judgment of our sin. Set free from that way of thinking that says, I need everyone to serve me. Jesus pays our ransom so we can be freed. Set free to live in his kingdom. Set free from our twisted view of the world. Set free from wanting to lord it over others. Set free from constantly seeking people to serve us and make us great because we know we're loved. Jesus has paid our debts. We know we are respected. He died for me. We know we are cared for. We are adopted into God's family. Because God the Son gave his life for me. Jesus didn't come kind of grasping and taking. He came giving and serving. God is not a taker. He's a giver. Verse 45, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Can you see why arrogant Christian is like thin sumo wrestler or hot ice cream? Jesus is the king who serves. And Christians are people who have been served by God the Son dying in their place. Christians aren't special. They've just received an amazing gift. And that gift should turn our whole world upside down. To the degree that we really understand verse 45, will our lives really be changed? As the truth that Jesus didn't come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many, as that sinks down into our hearts, well, that radically changes his followers. As we finish, I just want to talk to two groups of people, and then we'll have a song and a chance for questions. Firstly, I just want to talk to you, if you're not a Christian, can you see that Jesus is a giver and not a taker? Jesus isn't after your service of him. He doesn't want you to do stuff for him. He came to earth because we are trapped. And he has come to serve us. He's come to save us. He came to pay our ransom to set us free. Why not make today the day when you decide to let him serve you? To accept the gift that he wants to give. Ask him to pay your ransom. And do that today. Now, if you would say that you are a Christian, can you see that Jesus is calling you to a radically different life? A radically different way of living to everybody else in the world. So if your life, if what you value, how you spend your time, who you hang out with, what you do with your money, if that doesn't look any different from your neighbours and your colleagues, your mates, then you've got to wonder, are you following Jesus? To be a Christian is to be served by the living God and set free from the sin that binds us, set free to serve. It's possible to be an arrogant Christian because our salvation isn't based on what we do, but on what Jesus has done for us. But Christians should be continually growing away from arrogance and towards humility, in a willingness to serve others. I wonder how you could grow in that this week. Is there someone you know who's struggling? How could you reach out to them? Maybe you could go for a walk or give them a phone call. I wonder how your close relationships would be radically changed if you lived serving them instead of expecting them to serve you. I find these words of Jesus challenging and revealing. I'd urge you to pick one concrete area and maybe one particular relationship and pray for Jesus to help you to live this out this week.